Welcome back. Do you guys remember when Sylvanas was war chief of the Horde? You know, back when she burned Teldrassil to the ground, killing thousands of night elves? Do you remember the aftermath, when Sylvanas uttered these words at the gates of Orgrimmar?
The Horde is nothing!
And after this, she left the Horde and took off to Northrend. Well, this is where our story continues. Sylvanas travelled to Icecrown Citadel, where she confronted Bolvar Fordragon, the current Lich King. She defeated him, and she grabbed the Helm of Domination and ripped it in half, tearing the sky open. And holy shit, when I saw this, I was so excited for this expansion. I thought it was going to be epic. So Sylvanas opened a massive rift to the Shadowlands, which is basically the place that everyone goes when they die. Now Bolvar warned her
that power will be your prison.
But Sylvanas just said,
This world is a prison, and I will set us all free.
So what did Sylvanas mean by this? How is she going to set us free? Well, we'll soon find that Sylvanas had struck a deal with a guy called the Jailer. You see, several years back, Sylvanas discovered that her soul was damned to go to the Maw. And the Maw is basically this place in the Shadowlands of eternal darkness and torture, and it's just a pretty shit place to be. Now, the reason Sylvanas was condemned to go to the Maw was because of the bad shit she was forced to do when she was under the control of Arthas, back when Arthas was the Lich King, back in Warcraft 3. So basically, she thought it was a pretty dick move that she was going to have to go to hell for things that she didn't want to do, for things that she was forced to do. Now, the Jailer promised Sylvanas that he could break the system, that she won't be unjustly sent to the Maw, but instead that all souls would get freedom in the afterlife. Now, none of this was true. The Jailer was lying. He didn't actually want to do any of that, but we'll get to that in a sec. Now, back to our story. Sylvanas had destroyed the Helm of the Lich King. So now, without a Lich King to control them, the Scourge were running rampant across Azeroth, and this was like the pre-patch event before the expansion. And amongst all of this commotion, Sylvanas' forces captured some of Azeroth's greatest leaders: Anduin, Jaina, Thrall, and Bane. They were dragged through the rift into the Shadowlands. And this is where the expansion started, with us going into the Shadowlands. We arrived in the Maw where we saw the Jailer for the first time. His name is Zuval, but I'm just going to call him the Jailer. And he's like this titan-like dude with a hole in his chest. We found the kidnapped leaders, but we weren't able to free them just yet. We managed to escape ourselves to Oribus, which is the main city of the Shadowlands, but we had to leave Anduin and the others behind. In Oribus, we learned how the Shadowlands works. Essentially, there's an arbiter who judges arriving souls and sends each to an appropriate afterlife. Anima is the life energy that each soul carries. Basically, this energy is what fuels the Shadowlands. But there's been a problem. The arbiter was broken. She's dormant and unresponsive. And without the arbiter, all of the souls were falling straight to the Maw. This basically meant that anyone who had died since the Legion expansion went straight to the Maw, so basically straight to hell. This is also what caused an anima drought. With none of the souls going to the afterlives they were supposed to be going to, each zone was basically getting weaker, and the Maw was getting stronger. So, why did the Arbiter break? Well, back in Legion, when we killed Argus, who was a Titan, his soul was sent to the Arbiter to be judged. But she couldn't process a Titan soul, so she essentially just shut down. Now, the Shadowlands has 4 major afterlives, and this is what we sort of learnt about next: Bastion, Maldraxxus, Ardenweald, and Revendreth. Each realm is ruled by an Eternal One. The Eternal Ones are like the top dudes of each zone, right? So we've got these 4 Eternal Ones. Well, actually there were 5, because the Jailer was actually an Eternal One too. And basically, like, long story short, the Jailer was the original Arbiter, and he was having to judge all the souls, and doing this sent him a bit mad. And I'm not sure if it was his madness or something else, but he foresaw some kind of unknown threat that was coming in the future. He thought that the only way for reality to survive this threat was to rewrite everything to be united under his control. So his plan has always been to obtain the sigils from each of the Eternal Ones, including his own, and use all 5 to travel to a place called Zereth Mortis, which is where everything in reality is created. And in there, he wanted to recreate everything under his control. It's a pretty straightforward story. The other Eternal Ones stopped him. This is like a millennia ago. They pulled the sigil out of his chest, leaving that big hole we see, and imprisoned him in the maw. Then, they used his sigil to create the new Arbiter to replace him.
Long ago, each of the Eternal Ones was given a symbol about creating. Yet Zaval saw these sigils as keys to the end.
So that's the background. Now back to our story. We kind of just travel around the Shadowlands for a bit. We visit each realm. They've all got problems of their own, but I'm not going to get into those now. But what I will say is that Sire Denathrius, which is the ruler of Revendreth, was betraying the other realms. He was basically working with the jailer. He was stockpiling anima and he was sending it to the maw. He'd actually already given up his sigil to the jailer willingly.
No doubt Sire Denathrius willingly offered his sigil to the Vanished One.
So we went into the maw and we saved most of the leaders who'd been captured. But Anduin? Well, Anduin got fucked up. The jailer had Anduin's sword reforged into a Mournblade. Basically, the jailer got the soul of the original Lich King, Arthas, and slapped it into the sword. He also used these domination runes to mind control Anduin. And then the jailer sent this dominated Anduin to Bastion, where he stabbed the Archon and extracted her sigil. That's the second sigil obtained. Then the jailer launched a massive attack on Ardenweald. Sylvanas led the attack as a distraction, while Anduin slipped past and absorbed the Winter Queen sigil. That's the third sigil obtained. The jailer then pulled a new chunk of land into the maw. This was a place called Korthia, and the Primus had hidden his sigil there. We found the sigil, and we took it to this guy called the Rune Carver. Now, the Rune Carver was just this guy that we found in the maw quite a while ago. He helped us craft legendary armor, but we didn't really know who he was. So we took the sigil to him, and it restored his memories. And it turned out that the Rune Carver was actually one of the Eternal Ones from Meldraxxus, and he was called the Primus.
You brought my sigil to Zoval's lair?
Anyway, it was pretty stupid of us to take the sigil into the maw, because the jailer rocked up with Anduin and took the sigil off us by force. That's the fourth sigil the jailer's now got. The jailer then attacked Oribos itself, that's the main city of the Shadowlands. Sylvanas held us off, while the jailer ascended to the Arbiter's chamber, destroyed her, and took back his original sigil. The hole in his chest was filled, and he was restored to full power. And now the jailer's got all 5 sigils. The jailer opened the portal to Zereth Mortis. He revealed his true plan, not freedom, as he had promised to Sylvanas, but domination.
I will forge a new reality where all shall serve.
Sylvanas recognized Arthas's words in the jailer. She fired an arrow at him in defiance. In response, the jailer gave her the fragment of her soul that Arthas had severed from her years ago. This caused her to endlessly relive her atrocities, and Uther had to go into her mind to help her come to terms with this. Now, I haven't mentioned who Uther is yet. He plays a pretty big role in the story, but I will just say he was Arthas's mentor all the way back in Warcraft 3. And I'm not going to go into his story now, so let's just keep moving on. With all 5 sigils and the way to Zereth Mortis opened, the jailer went in there where he was going to go and recreate reality. But for us to follow him, we needed all 5 sigils as well. So we needed to go to each covenant and get each one to forge a new one. The Primus told us that for each covenant to do this, each covenant had to remember its purpose and find its future.
Each must remember its purpose and find its future.
So essentially, we went on this big journey and did a whole bunch of quests. In Revendreth, we gathered together the Court of Harvesters and they reforged their sigil. In Bastion, we brought together the 5 Paragons and together they reforged their sigil. In Ardenweald, the Winter Queen and Elune, turns out they're sisters, finally reconciled, and together they created a new sigil. In Meldraxxus, the Primus just reforged his own sigil on his own, and the Arbiter's attendants recreated her sigil from her voice that they still sang within them. So with all 5 new sigils, we opened a portal to Zereth Mortis. In Zereth Mortis, Pelagos, who is a Kyrian from Bastion, volunteered his soul.
In service to the Shadowlands, I offer my soul.
And they transformed him into the new Arbiter. He vowed to never again send souls to the maw. Meanwhile, the Primus had gathered shards from the broken Helm of Domination. This is the Lich King's helm that Sylvanas broke right at the beginning. the Primus reforged it into the Crown of Wills, which is a crown that embodies free will instead of domination. And this made us resistant to domination magic. Now inside Zereth Mortis, the jailer had gone to a place called the Speculator of the First Ones, and this is the place that he was going to do his thing. Inside, the jailer had fired up the machine of origination. This made the Forge of Souls beneath Icecrown Citadel back on Azeroth launch up. It drew upon the world soul of Azeroth, feeding it up into the Shadowlands. So basically the jailer was going to use the energy from Azeroth's soul itself to bring it into the Shadowlands and bring all of reality under his control. We used the Will of Crowns to resist the jailer's power, and we defeated him before he could do this unmaking or recreating or whatever he was going to do. And once this was done, the barrier between the mortal world and the Shadowlands was sealed. It was closed forever. So Pelagos was now the new Arbiter. He was wearing the Crown of Wills, and souls flowed to proper afterlives again. The anima drought was ended, and the Shadowlands was returning to normal. As for Sylvanas, she was sentenced to go into the Maw and free every unjustly imprisoned soul. And this could take her an eternity. And that's the story of the Shadowlands. It's really not that bad of a story. So why did everyone hate it so much? The real reason is the way they told the story. See, the way I just told the story I think was kind of okay, but the writers took it a bit too far. And instead of Shadowlands just being like its own little story, they tried to kind of shoehorn it into the broader story and basically rewrote a lot of the story that had already been told to try and make it make sense. So instead of the jailer just being a big bad boss, they tried to make him the ultimate 4D chess-playing mastermind who orchestrated everything, was working behind the scenes and was behind everything in the Warcraft universe. All of Warcraft history was reframed as his master plan. For example, the Dreadlords have always been part of the Burning Legion, but they undermined all of that. And they said, no, actually, they were created by Sire Denathrius for the jailer and infiltrated the Burning Legion.
The Nathrazim, serving the jailer, but they were part of the Burning Legion.
I think this meme summarizes it best. Like, it goes to say the Dreadlords corrupted Sargeras, who corrupted the Eridar, who corrupted Gul'dan, who corrupted the Orcs, blah, blah, blah. Like the jailer was orchestrating this entirely unpredictable chain of events. It's just bullshit. And there were other problems too. Anyway, this isn't a rant video, so let's move on. That wasn't the full story of the Shadowlands because I kind of skipped over some of the stories of each of the covenants and things like that, but it was the main story. So hopefully you're now up to speed on what it was all about. Sorry that it took me about 5 years to get around to making this. I guess I'll see you in 5 years' time when I get around to making the next video. So make sure you subscribe and I'll see you then, sometime in the future.